Hi everyone, welcome back to our cooking at home videos. My name is Zoe and I'm the family cooking instructor with Gallatin Valley Farm to School. In honor of Earth Day being this week, we're going to talk a little bit about zero waste cooking, and I have 5 tips for you to try at home to try and get to zero waste cooking in your kitchen. So we're going to dive right in with our first tip, which is using root vegetable greens. So this means the greens that come on carrots, beets, radishes, and things like that. There's a common misconception, I think, that you can't eat those greens, mostly because things like radish greens are kind of fuzzy and have a pretty coarse texture. But if you cook those down in any way, you can saute them or boil them. They get really tender and they taste, I think, a little bit between a kale and a spinach, so a nice in-between green there. And they'll add really good flavor and nutrients to things like frittatas or soups and things like that. And you can even use them in their raw form. You can throw them in a pesto. They work as your dark leafy green for your pesto, and when they're blended up, you can't really tell that they have kind of a coarser texture in their leaves. You might be wondering why we're doing this. Like, why would you want to even invest in eating the greens of your root vegetables? Well, they're actually really nutrient rich. They carry things like vitamins A, C, and K. They have a lot of fiber and they have a lot of protein. Not only are you saving the amount of food that you might be wasting, but you're also getting a lot of good nutrients as well. Our second tip is using all parts of a vegetable. And what I mean by this is, instead of peeling your potatoes and carrots, not doing that, and using even the stems of things like broccoli and cauliflower. So all of those things are edible, and they do also carry a lot of nutrients as well. If you think about all of the things that I've mentioned, and think about how big something like a radish is, and think about all of the greens that come off of that. If you chop that off and you dispose of that green, think of where that's going and the amount of food that is being wasted when people do that. So just some things to keep in mind when you're using vegetables. I wanted to show you, I have this broccoli stem and I want to show you how great it looks when it is grated. This is one of my favorite things to add to things like coleslaw. I just grate it up really good. It adds a lot of good flavor and a good crunchy texture to my coleslaw. So I'll grate a little bit of that up, and then you can see it looks a little bit like cucumber. And if you've ever had a kohlrabi, those kind of round, crazy looking things that are sometimes in the grocery store, I think they taste a little bit like that. So it's kind of a sort of a cross between a broccoli floret and a cucumber. So a little bit sweet and a little bit less intense than a broccoli floret. So really tasty, and you can do the same with cauliflower as well. Tip number 3 is using beans from their dry form. They're really cost effective. So a normal can is about $1.19, a can of black beans, and it produces about a cup and a half of black beans. So I spent $1.20-ish on these dry beans, and it doesn't look like very much. So it's about a cup and a half of dry beans, and that's going to yield me somewhere between 4 and 5 cups of cooked beans. I've saved myself $2 or $3. I've saved maybe 3 or 4 cans from going in the landfill. So we've gone through and we've eaten all of our greens from our carrots and our radishes, and we've eaten all of the stems from our broccoli and cauliflower, and we still have some things that are left over, like this crazy looking part of the broccoli. Now what am I going to do with that? Well, you're going to make a vegetable stock. So with this recipe then I'm going to share with you guys, it's going to yield about 16 cups of stock, and in my family of 2 that lasts us somewhere between a month and a half and 2 months. And it uses just all of the things that we normally throw away with vegetables or compost or dispose of. So I have things in here like the middles of tomatoes. I showed you this broccoli. I have the ends of a celery that I cut off, and I have some celery greens in there. And I have leftover carrots and all kinds of things that I normally eat at home. So I bulk made a bunch of soup, and so now I'm using those vegetables, the ends of those vegetables, to create this really nutrient dense and really flavorful stock. So I'm going to show you how to make this stock. So what you need is a big stock pot, somewhere between 17 and 18 cups of water, and then it's usually about a gallon-sized bag full of vegetables. And like I said, mine are all going to be fresh. But normally what I would do is put them in a gallon bag and then freeze them until I'm ready to make stock. And some salt. Oops, some salt. So what we're gonna do is fill our stock pot with all of our water. And then we're gonna throw our vegetables in and our scraps. Okay, and then if you have any kinds of fresh flavor profiles like garlic or herbs, you can throw those in there. They're not necessary, but kind of a nice fresh addition to your stock. So I have a little bit of garlic and I'm going to throw in there, and I left the paper on. We're going to strain all of this anyway, so it's okay to leave the paper on there. And then I like to start with about 1.5 tablespoons of salt. That might seem like a lot, but this is a lot of water. And you can always add more salt if you need any more. I generally do end up adding a little bit more, but as you know, you can always add salt, but you can't take it away. So start with a little bit of less than you think you might need. You bring it to a boil, and then you simmer it, lower it to simmer, and then you just let it sit for 3 or 4 hours. And you're looking for a really dark vegetable stock, and then you're gonna strain your liquid through like a fine mesh strainer. It's okay if you get some vegetable chunks in there, they're not gonna harm you. And I divvy all of that up and then let it sit at room temperature before you put it in the fridge or in the freezer. Now I like to freeze my stock because it lasts a lot longer. So I'll usually keep one of these out for the week, and then I'll put the rest of the 3 in the freezer, and then they'll last about 6 months. So my last tip, so we've done it, we've used just about everything we can for our vegetable scraps, and we've made all of the vegetable stocks. What do we do if we still have food scraps left over? Did you know that composting is a great way to use up all of the rest of those food scraps? Some companies, like Happy Trash Can here in Bozeman, will take meat, bones, and dairy products in their compost. All of those food scraps make for a really rich and nutritious soil to use in your garden beds. We'll have a video in the coming weeks about composting at home, so you can learn more about that. But for now, my tip is to go to companies like Happy Trash Can and to get rid of the rest of your food waste in a positive and healthy way for the earth. Thanks for joining me today learning about zero waste cooking in honor of Earth Day, because every day should be Earth Day in the kitchen. Check out our website for more videos, and we'll see you guys all next week.